The air inside the small Tokyo dojo buzzed with quiet excitement. Students lined up in perfect rows, waiting for their guest instructor, the legendary Steven Seagal, to begin his seminar. At 60-something, Seagal moved with an almost effortless grace, his posture calm, his eyes steady. Every motion he made carried the weight of decades of discipline, but not everyone in the room believed in the legend. Standing at the back was Jason Miller, a 27-year-old black belt known more for his confidence than his humility. He'd seen Seagal in movies, tossing opponents across rooms with a flick of the wrist. To him, that was Hollywood, not real martial arts. He leaned toward a friend and whispered, smirking, "Let's see if the old man still has it." When Seagal invited questions, Jason raised his hand. "Sensei Seagal," he said with a half grin. "How about a quick spar? You know, just for fun." The room went still. Every student froze. Even the sound of the ceiling fan seemed to fade. The senior instructor's eyes widened in disbelief. "You didn't challenge Steven Seagal, not in his own seminar." Seagal turned his head slowly, his calm expression never breaking. "For fun?" he repeated softly, almost as if testing the word. Then he smiled, but it wasn't the friendly kind. It was the kind that made the back of your neck tingle. He stepped forward, removing his black jacket with deliberate ease. "Fun," Seagal said, "can be dangerous when ego gets involved." Jason chuckled nervously, bowing quickly. "No disrespect, Sensei. I just want to test myself." Seagal nodded once. "Very well," he said, motioning toward the center of the mat. "Let's see what you've learned." The other students began forming a circle around them. The energy in the room shifted from curiosity to tension. Everyone could feel it. Something was about to happen. Jason tightened his belt, trying to mask his nerves. Across from him, Seagal stood completely relaxed, one hand resting lightly on his side. He didn't posture. He didn't move. He simply waited. And in that silence, one thought crossed every mind in the dojo. Jason might have just made the biggest mistake of his life. The moment Jason stepped onto the mat, the air in the dojo shifted. The easy chatter was gone, replaced by the heavy silence that comes before a storm. Students gathered in a tight semicircle, eyes wide, phones quietly recording from the corners. Jason bowed quickly, his movements sharp and proud. Steven Seagal returned the bow, but his was slower, deeper, the kind that carried respect, not competition. He looked at Jason the way a mountain might look at a storm cloud, patient, unshaken, unmoved. Jason took his stance, a flashy mix of karate and kickboxing. His muscles flexed. His breathing was loud. He wanted everyone to see his confidence. But Seagal just stood there, still as stone, hands loosely by his sides. "Whenever you're ready," Seagal said calmly. Jason smirked. "Oh, I'm ready." He began circling, light on his feet, testing Seagal's reactions. The older man didn't move an inch. Jason threw a quick feint, a jab to the air, a testing kick. Nothing. Seagal didn't even blink. It was like trying to intimidate a shadow. The silence stretched on until it became unbearable. Jason decided to make the first real move. With a sudden burst of speed, he dashed forward, aiming a precise front kick toward Seagal's chest. Fast, clean, and well-practiced. But Seagal simply shifted his weight, letting Jason's leg pass by as if it were smoke. His hand moved once, and barely visible, and when Jason stumbled, his balance broken. He caught himself, breathing hard, his ego taking the first hit. Seagal's voice was calm. "Never attack from anger," he said. "It clouds your judgment." Jason clenched his jaw. "With all due respect, Sensei, I wasn't angry." "Then why are your hands shaking?" Seagal asked softly. The crowd let out a low murmur. Jason's face flushed red. He adjusted his stance, masking his embarrassment with aggression. "All right," he said, "let's go again." He launched another attack, this time a spinning back kick meant to impress. Seagal turned slightly, his hand guiding Jason's leg past him again with frightening ease. The younger man spun off balance and almost fell. Seagal didn't strike back. He just watched, his eyes calm, like a teacher waiting for a student to realize the lesson. A whisper ran through the room. "He's not even trying." Jason heard it. That whisper hit him harder than any punch. He rushed forward again, throwing a series of punches, left, right, hook, jab. But every blow was brushed aside like a leaf caught in the wind. Seagal's movements were fluid, almost lazy, but perfectly timed. Then Seagal spoke again, his tone barely above a whisper. "You're fighting me," he said, "but your real opponent is your pride." That sentence landed harder than any strike. Jason stopped for a moment, chest heaving, trying to read the man in front of him. Seagal hadn't moved more than a few inches, yet Jason was sweating as if he'd run miles. The room was silent. Only the sound of Jason's breathing filled the space. Then, from somewhere near the edge of the mat, one of the students muttered, "He's done already." Jason turned his head for half a second, a fatal mistake. Seagal moved. It wasn't a flashy move, not something from a movie. Just a simple step, a turn, and a tap to Jason's wrist. But in that single second, Jason's body spun around, his balance lost, his knee buckled. He hit the mat with a heavy thud that echoed across the dojo floor. Gasps erupted. Even the senior instructor stood frozen. Seagal didn't follow up. He simply stepped back, looking down at Jason with the quiet gaze of a man who had seen this lesson play out 1,000 times before. "You wanted fun," he said evenly. "Fun ends when respect leaves." Jason blinked, trying to catch his breath. His pride screamed to stand up, to keep fighting, but something deep inside told him to pause. For the first time, he looked at Seagal not as an actor or an old man, but as a master. The crowd around them remained silent, almost reverent. No one dared speak. Every student in that dojo could feel the weight of what they were witnessing. Skill so refined it looked like simplicity. Jason finally rose to his knees, sweat dripping from his brow. He bowed low, more sincerely this time. Seagal nodded once, acknowledging the respect. But before anyone could relax, Seagal said quietly, "If you still wish to continue, I won't stop you." Jason hesitated, where part of him wanted redemption. The other part whispered, "Don't." The room held its breath, waiting for his choice. Have you ever seen arrogance backfire this fast? Comment below, and tell us which country and city you're watching from. We love seeing where Seagal's fans are tuning in from around the world. For a few moments, the dojo was so silent you could hear the faint hum of the fluorescent lights. Jason stayed on one knee, breathing hard, while Steven Seagal stood calmly in front of him. Posture straight, breathing steady, his presence commanding but not aggressive. Everyone thought the lesson was over. But Jason's pride wasn't ready to surrender. He rose slowly, forcing a grin. "One more round, Sensei. I won't make the same mistake twice." Seagal studied him in silence, his expression unreadable. Then, almost with pity, he nodded. "As you wish." The students whispered among themselves, some excited, others nervous. They had all heard stories about Seagal's control, about how he could end a fight without hurting anyone. But they also knew that when he decided to teach a real lesson, no one forgot it. Jason bounced on his toes, rolling his shoulders. His earlier confidence had cracks, but his ego refused to admit defeat. He circled Seagal again, faster this time, testing every angle. Seagal remained centered, grounded, like the eye of a storm. Jason feinted left, then right, and finally threw a sharp roundhouse kick toward Seagal's head. In a blur, Seagal stepped forward, not backward, and deflected the leg with his forearm. His movement was so minimal yet so precise that Jason's own power turned against him. He spun awkwardly, landing off balance. Seagal didn't strike. He just looked at him and said, "You're chasing the fight. You should be chasing peace." Jason's breathing grew heavier. "With respect, Sensei," he snapped, "I didn't come here for philosophy. I came here to fight." That sentence changed the air instantly. Seagal's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in focus. "Then learn what a fight truly is." Jason roared, launching forward with a barrage of punches, hooks, elbows, knees, anything to break through that invisible wall of calm. Seagal flowed between the attacks like water slipping through rocks. Every move Jason made seemed to lead him into another trap. With a gentle twist of his wrist, Seagal caught Jason's arm and turned it outward. Jason's body followed automatically, crashing to the mat again. The sound echoed. Thud! Gasps filled the dojo. One student covered his mouth. Another whispered. That wasn't even full strength. Jason rolled to his side, groaning but still not done. His pride burned too hot to let go. He scrambled back to his feet, wiping sweat from his face. Seagal sighed. "You think strength is speed and muscle. It isn't. Strength is balance." "Balance?" Jason barked. "Balance won't win a fight." Seagal's lips twitched. "No," he said softly, "but it will keep you from losing one." Jason attacked again, anger taking full control now. But his strikes were sloppier, his breathing ragged. Seagal waited, calm as a monk, then used a single step and redirect, and Jason's arm twisted in a blur. The next thing he knew, he was face down on the mat, his wrist pinned in an Aikido lock that froze him in shock. Seagal spoke gently, almost kindly. "You can feel that pressure? If I move 1 inch more, your wrist will break." Jason nodded frantically. "Yes, yes, sensei." Seagal released him immediately and stepped back. "Then remember this, control is not weakness. It is mastery." Jason lay there for a moment, pride shattered, body aching, mind racing. He had trained for years, earned his black belt through countless tournaments, yet he had just been dismantled without a single punch thrown in anger. Seagal bowed slightly. "The demonstration is over." The dojo remained silent, the crowd unsure whether to applaud or breathe. Every student there had witnessed something they'd never forget, the difference between a fighter and a master. Jason sat up, face red, both from exhaustion and humility. He muttered, How did you do that?" Seagal smiled faintly. "You were fighting me. I was only moving with you. That's the difference." The room erupted in quiet applause, and not for the victory but for the lesson. Even Jason's own instructor nodded in deep respect. Seagal adjusted his sleeve, turned toward the students and said, "You can train your whole life to win fights. But if you never learn respect, you'll lose before the first strike is thrown." The line hit everyone like a wave. Jason stood slowly, then bowed deeply this time, a genuine bow born from respect, not formality. "Thank you, sensei," he said quietly. Seagal nodded once. "Good. Now you're ready to learn. If you were standing there as a student, would you step in to stop the match? Or let Seagal teach him the hard way? Drop your answer in the comments." The dojo stayed eerily quiet for several moments after the match ended. The sound of Jason's breathing, heavy and uneven, was the only thing that filled the air. Steven Seagal stood in the center of the mat, posture still perfect, expression calm and unreadable. For most of the students watching, something had just shifted. A few came forward to help Jason up, while others kept glancing at Seagal with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Then, like a ripple spreading through still water, the whispers began. "Did you see that move?" one whispered. "He didn't even hit him," another added. "I thought that stuff only worked in movies." One older student, a veteran martial artist who had trained for decades, spoke softly but clearly. "That's not movie magic. That's Aikido mastery." Seagal turned toward the students, his voice low but powerful. "Everyone here saw what happened. You saw strength but not violence. You saw control but not pride. This," he gestured toward the mat, "is what martial arts were meant to be." Jason, still catching his breath, nodded from where he knelt. "You're right," he admitted, voice hoarse. "I thought it was about proving something. About winning." Seagal approached him slowly. "Winning is easy," he said. "You win when your opponent gives up. But mastery is when your opponent learns something." Those words hung in the air like sacred scripture. Even the youngest students, who barely understood the techniques, could feel the weight of the message. Jason stood again, humbled now. He bowed deeply. "Sensei, I was wrong to challenge you that way." Seagal returned the bow with equal respect. "It's not wrong to seek truth. It's only wrong to stop seeking it once you think you know everything." The crowd watched in silence, realizing they had witnessed something rare. Not a humiliation, but a transformation. Jason had entered the match with pride and ego. He was leaving it wiser, stronger in a different way. As the whispers grew louder, a young boy from the back of the room raised his hand timidly. "Sensei Seagal," he asked, "how did you stay so calm when he attacked you?" Seagal smiled faintly. "When you know yourself," he said, "no one can shake you. His anger was not my enemy. It was his." The boy blinked, unsure if he understood completely, but the adults nodded in deep appreciation. One of the senior instructors, bowing slightly, spoke up. "Your control, Master Seagal. It's something we all strive for. Most of us train our bodies, but you've clearly mastered the mind as well." Seagal looked at him and said, "The mind commands the body. If your spirit is unsettled, your body follows. That's why you must learn peace before power." The room stayed still. The scent of sweat and polished wood mixed with the heavy quiet of realization. Jason, still rubbing his wrist, chuckled softly. "I thought I was showing off my black belt. Instead, I just learned what it really means." Seagal gave him a small nod. A black belt doesn't mean you're finished learning. It means you're finally ready to begin. Those words earned murmurs of approval from everyone in the dojo, even those who had come just to watch. The visitors, the reporters, the curious young fighters felt a sense of respect they hadn't expected. From the sidelines, a man holding a camera finally spoke up. "Sensei Seagal, mind if I post this video online? The world should see what real martial arts looks like." Seagal looked at him and said, "If you share it, make sure they understand why I did this. It wasn't to embarrass anyone. It was to remind everyone what humility looks like." The cameraman nodded solemnly. "I will, sir." Jason stepped forward, still humbled but more centered than before. "Sensei," he said quietly, "I'd like to train under you, if you'll let me." For the first time that day, Seagal smiled fully. "Then you've already begun," he said. The students erupted in applause, not the wild kind reserved for a knockout or a dramatic finish, but slow, respectful claps that echoed through the dojo like a heartbeat. Each sound carried meaning, gratitude, reverence, understanding. Seagal bowed to the group once more. "Remember," he said, "technique without respect is nothing. Skill without humility is weakness, and power without purpose is dangerous." He turned toward the door, but before leaving, he looked back at Jason. "Thank you for reminding everyone why we train." Jason nodded, eyes glistening. "No, Sensei. Thank you for reminding me who I really am." As Seagal stepped outside, the students followed him with their eyes, watching a man who didn't need to prove his strength because he had already mastered himself. That day, the dojo didn't just witness a fight. It witnessed a lesson, one that would echo for years in every punch, every bow, and every quiet moment of reflection. If you were in that dojo, what lesson would you take from Seagal's calm control, power, peace, or humility? Type your answer in the comments below and tell us what martial arts means to you. By the next morning, the quiet dojo had become the center of an online storm. The short video clip, barely 3 minutes long, was everywhere. It showed Jason, the proud black belt, confidently stepping up to challenge Steven Seagal, and then being effortlessly disarmed and humbled. But what captured the world's attention wasn't Jason's fall. It was Seagal's composure. No anger. No taunting. No gloating. Just calm mastery and control. The video's title read, "Black Belt Challenges Steven Seagal, Gets a Masterclass in Humility." Within hours, millions had watched it. Martial arts forums exploded with debate. News outlets picked it up. Some called it the perfect martial arts lesson caught on camera. Others said it was a reminder of what real respect looks like. Back at the dojo, Jason scrolled through the comments, eyes wide. "Man, that was hard to watch but inspiring. Props to the kid, takes courage to face Seagal. That's why he's a master. Calm under fire." He smiled faintly, still feeling the ache in his wrist but even more humbled by the outpouring of respect. That afternoon, Seagal returned to the dojo. No cameras, no reporters this time, just him, his students, and a quiet sense of anticipation. Jason approached him as soon as he entered. "Sensei," he said, "I didn't mean for that video to go viral. Someone posted it without asking." Seagal looked at him, then placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't need to apologize," he said calmly. "Sometimes the world needs to see a real example instead of another movie fight." Jason nodded. "People are calling it a lesson in humility." Seagal smiled slightly. "Then they're finally learning." He turned toward the students who had gathered. "What happened yesterday," he began, "wasn't a fight. It was a reflection of life. When someone attacks you with anger, you have two choices. Return that anger, or stay centered and let it pass through you." The students listened intently, eyes fixed on him. Seagal continued, "In martial arts, people often confuse strength with domination. But true strength is control. Of your opponent, yes, but first of yourself." Jason lowered his head, humbled but listening deeply. Seagal walked slowly across the mats. "I've met countless fighters, some with more power than they know what to do with, but very few have peace. Power without peace turns into pride. And pride," he looked at Jason kindly, "pride blinds you to truth." Jason nodded silently. "I see that now." Seagal motioned for everyone to sit. The room fell still again. "I didn't throw him to prove anything," Seagal said. "I moved with his energy. That's what Aikido teaches. Not to defeat, but to redirect. When you stop fighting against the world, you start moving with it. A hush fell across the dojo. Even the sound of traffic outside seemed to fade away. One of the students raised his hand hesitantly. "Sensei, what if someone doesn't respect you? Shouldn't we defend our honor?" Seagal's eyes softened. "Defend your honor, yes, but not your ego. Ego demands attention. Honor demands integrity." He paused, letting the words sink in. "If you fight every battle that insults your pride, you'll spend your life fighting. But if you fight only when necessary, for others, for peace, for justice, you'll always stand with purpose." Jason looked up.
"So it's not about winning fights, it's about winning yourself?"
Seagal nodded slowly. "Exactly." The group remained silent, reflecting on every word. Finally, Seagal turned toward Jason. "You showed courage yesterday," he said. "Not because you stood up to me, but because you're standing here today, ready to learn again. That takes more strength than any punch." Jason smiled faintly. "Thank you, Sensei. I promise I'll train with humility from now on." "Good," Seagal said. "Then let that be your new beginning." That evening, as Seagal left the dojo, a crowd had gathered outside. Reporters, fans, martial artists, all waiting to see the man behind the viral clip. Microphones were thrust toward him. "Mr. Seagal, how do you feel about the video going viral? What lesson should people take from it?" He paused before answering. "If they learn anything, I hope it's this. Martial arts isn't about hurting others. It's about understanding yourself. The goal isn't to win fights, it's to end them before they begin." A reporter asked, "Do you think you embarrassed the challenger?" Seagal smiled gently. "No, I reminded him who he truly is. I'm a student. We're all students every day." The crowd nodded, some clapping softly, moved by his words. Later that night, the clip continued spreading. But now, it wasn't just about a fight. It had become a message. Teachers around the world began using it in their classes. Hashtags like Real Martial Arts and Humility Challenge trended across social media. For every comment mocking Jason, there were 10 praising his courage and Seagal's wisdom. And in the middle of all the noise, 2 men, a master and his student, were quietly training again, away from cameras, away from fame. Because in the end, the greatest lessons aren't taught for the world to see. They're lived, one quiet moment at a time. If you watch that viral clip, what do you think was the biggest lesson? Respect, discipline, or humility? Drop your answer below and tell us where in the world you're watching from. A few days had passed since the viral video swept through the internet, and Jason's life had changed completely. Everywhere he went, people recognized him, not as the cocky black belt who challenged Steven Seagal, but as the student who learned humility. At first, he didn't know how to feel. Some comments online still mocked him. He got folded like a lawn chair. That's what happens when ego meets mastery. But others were different, respectful, even encouraging. Takes real guts to stand back up and keep learning. This guy has heart. Seagal just brought out his better self. And those were the ones Jason focused on. He returned to the dojo every morning, training in silence. No more boasting. No more showing off. Just repetition, sweat, and quiet focus. Steven Seagal would often watch from the sidelines, arms crossed, saying nothing. But every once in a while, he'd give a small nod, and Jason would know he was on the right path. One evening, Seagal finally approached him after practice. "Jason," he said, "how do you feel now?" Jason wiped sweat from his brow. "Tired, but better. I finally understand what you meant about control. I'm not fighting the opponent anymore, I'm fighting the noise in my own head." Seagal smiled faintly. "Good, that's where every battle begins." Then he paused. "I've been invited to speak at the International Martial Arts Summit this weekend. They want me to demonstrate the philosophy of peace through movement. I want you to come with me." Jason froze. "Me, after what happened?" Seagal nodded. "Especially after what happened. The world saw your mistake. Now they should see your growth." Jason swallowed hard, nervous but honored. "I won't let you down, Sensei." 3 days later, the summit was packed. Thousands of martial artists from around the world filled the arena. Black belts, instructors, champions. Cameras lined the stage. When Seagal walked in, the crowd erupted into respectful applause. His calm presence seemed to fill the room instantly. Beside him, Jason bowed deeply, feeling the weight of both shame and pride. Seagal stepped up to the microphone. Many of you saw a video recently, he began. A young man challenged me to a friendly spar. Some called it arrogance. I call it curiosity, the beginning of learning. The audience leaned forward, hanging on his words. Seagal gestured toward Jason. This student is here today, not as an example of failure, but of courage. Because the greatest warrior isn't the one who never falls, but the one who rises every time he does. Jason bowed again, and the crowd applauded warmly. Then Seagal turned to him and said, "Show them what you've learned." Jason nodded, stepping onto the mat. The demonstration began slowly. No aggression this time, no tension. Jason attacked with control, and Seagal countered with smooth, fluid motions, redirecting each strike effortlessly. It was art, not combat. Every twist, every lock, every throw carried grace. Jason's movements were humble yet sharp, disciplined yet soft. When the sequence ended, Jason stood still, breathing heavily. Seagal turned to him. "And now," he said quietly, "show them peace." Jason bowed, then extended his hand. Not as a fighter, but as a student offering respect. The audience erupted in applause, louder, prouder this time. Many stood, clapping and cheering, recognizing what they'd just witnessed wasn't a fight at all, but forgiveness. Seagal stepped forward to speak again. "What you just saw," he said, "isn't about strength. It's about transformation. Martial arts isn't meant to break people. It's meant to build them. Every fall is a step toward balance. Every loss a lesson." He turned toward Jason. "And balance," he said, "isn't something you find in the dojo. It's something you carry into life." Jason bowed deeply, eyes wet with emotion. "Thank you, Sensei, for not giving up on me when I didn't deserve your patience." Seagal nodded. "A teacher's job is not to punish, but to guide. You listened, and that's the greatest victory of all." The applause continued, echoing across the hall. Reporters rushed to capture every moment. But Seagal, as always, remained calm, humble, and grounded. After the event, as they walked outside, Jason turned to him and said, "Sensei, the crowd cheered for you, but they looked at me with respect. I don't understand why." Seagal looked at him gently. "Because they saw themselves in you. Everyone has a moment when pride blinds them, but few have the courage to face it and grow. That's why they respect you." Jason smiled softly. "Then I guess I owe them, and you, everything." Seagal shook his head. "You owe only one thing, your continued discipline." They both laughed quietly as they walked away, the setting sun casting a golden light over the arena. That moment wasn't about fame or viral videos anymore. It was about a student who had fallen, and a master who had helped him stand taller than ever. If you were Jason, would you have accepted Seagal's offer to perform again after being humiliated? Or stayed quiet? Tell us in the comments and share what true redemption means to you. By the next week, clips from the Martial Arts Summit were everywhere. The internet had exploded again. But this time it wasn't about humiliation or shock. It was about respect. Thousands of comments poured in from every corner of the world. This is what real martial arts looks like. Jason's redemption story is inspiring. He turned embarrassment into growth. Seagal taught a lesson more powerful than any knockout. News outlets picked up the story, calling it the fight that taught the world about humility. Schools began playing the video for their students. Even non-martial artists were quoting Seagal's words about peace, control, and respect. In the middle of all that chaos, Steven Seagal stayed silent. No interviews, no press appearances, just training, teaching, living quietly, the same way he always had. Jason, however, found himself in a strange new position. People reached out from all over the world, young fighters, students, teachers, all saying the same thing. "You inspired me." He would read those messages every night and shake his head in disbelief. "I didn't inspire anyone," he'd tell Seagal one day at the dojo. "You did." Seagal looked at him, calm as ever. "No," he said softly. "They didn't see me, they saw themselves through you. You showed them it's okay to fall, as long as you rise wiser." Jason nodded, taking those words to heart. Weeks turned into months. The dojo grew in size, welcoming students from different countries, people who had seen the viral video and wanted to train the Seagal way. But what surprised everyone was how Seagal ran his classes. There were no ranks displayed. No competition, no ego. Just movement, meditation, and mastery. One evening after class, Seagal gathered everyone together. His voice was calm but filled with quiet authority. The internet, he said, can make a spectacle out of anything. But what we do here, this discipline, it's sacred. It's not about views. It's about values. He looked around the room. Every one of you carries an energy, a force. You can use it to hurt or to heal. Choose wisely. Jason listened closely, every word sinking deep. He realized Seagal wasn't just teaching martial arts. He was teaching a philosophy of living. Later that night, Jason sat outside the dojo watching the sun disappear behind the mountains. He thought about how far he had come, from a prideful challenger to a humble student. Seagal joined him quietly, sitting beside him without a word. After a moment, Jason asked, "Sensei, do you ever get tired of teaching the same lessons?" Seagal smiled faintly. "The lessons don't get old," he said. "Only the students do, when they stop learning." Jason chuckled. "I guess I was one of those students once." Seagal looked at him, his tone soft but serious. "You still are. So am I. The day I stop learning is the day I stop living." There was a long silence between them, the comfortable kind, built on respect and shared understanding. Finally, Seagal stood and looked toward the horizon. "You've learned well," he said. "But remember, humility isn't something you show once. It's something you practice every day." Jason nodded. "I understand," Seagal smiled. "Good, then maybe it's time for you to start teaching." Jason blinked in surprise. "Me? Teach?" "Not my way," Seagal said, turning back toward the dojo. "Your way. The world needs more teachers who've known failure, not just success." Those words stayed with Jason long after Seagal had left for the night. Months later, Jason opened his own small dojo. Nothing fancy, just a clean mat, wooden floors, and a single calligraphy sign that read, "Respect above all." On his first day, he taught a group of kids. And when one student grew frustrated after losing balance during practice, Jason smiled and said, "Don't fight the movement. Flow with it. Falling isn't losing, it's learning." The same lesson Seagal had taught him, word spread quickly. People loved Jason's humility, his patience, and the story behind his teaching. Students said training with him felt different, less about power, more about purpose. One afternoon, Seagal visited his dojo quietly, watching from the back. He didn't interrupt, just observed Jason teaching. The same calmness, the same control. After class, Jason noticed him and hurried over. "Sensei," he said, bowing deeply. "You came." Seagal smiled. "I wanted to see how the student became the teacher." Jason grinned. "I'm still learning." Seagal nodded approvingly. "Good. Then you're on the right path." He turned to leave, but before stepping outside, he said, "Remember, a true master doesn't create followers. He creates more masters." Jason bowed once more, eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, Sensei." "For everything." Seagal simply raised a hand in acknowledgement, then walked away, his figure fading into the evening light, quiet and graceful as always. Jason stood there for a long moment, the echo of his teacher's wisdom filling the space. He knew that this wasn't the end of the story, just another beginning, because the real dojo wasn't a place. It was life itself. Every challenge, every fall, every rise. And the greatest fight wasn't against others. It was against one's own ego. If this story moved you, type respect in the comments. Remember, true strength isn't about how hard you hit, but how calm you stay when life hits you. Subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us what honor, humility, and real strength truly mean.